Good evening, everybody, and welcome to 105.4 FM Rainbow. It's a super Saturday evening, and you're with me, yours truly, DC, keeping you company on the program Hello FM. And today, a very special program that is World Mental Health Day. And sharing the studio with me is none other than Miriam Sequeira, who is, a mental health researcher and a psychologist at Sangath, Goa. So on behalf of FM Rainbow, Miriam, a warm welcome to you, and just say hello to all the listeners tuned in.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here with all of you.
And that was Miriam Sequeira, my dear friends, and we are going to be in conversation about everything that has something to do with mental health on this lovely program, which we're dedicating it to World Mental Health Day. And we've got also in the background Neha, also is over here, who's going to be official, mediator, so as to say. So for all of you who've just tuned in, a warm welcome. This is a very special program today, and we're going to be talking about mental health, because today we observe all over the world Mental Health Day. This year's World Mental Health Day comes at a time when our daily lives have changed considerably due to the pandemic. The past months have been very challenging. Also, we have come a long way since the first World Mental Health Day was observed back in 1992. This year's theme being Mental Health for All. Tell us a little something about it, and what is your take on all this?
Sure. Thanks, DC, for the question, a very important one. And the mental health gap has been a problem that has been existing for a long time, but the pandemic has only put it in the forefront that there are a lot of people with mental health problems and they do not have access to care. So what has happened right now with the pandemic is people who had problems before the pandemic now didn't have access maybe, or had limited access to their mental health practitioners, for which their mental health may have deteriorated. And then there were people who were, say, on the fence, who were more likely to develop mental health problems because of the stress that we have gone through in the last year, have developed a mental health problem. So we are seeing an unusual rise. And the theme this year is to focus on the fact that despite there being such a big need to address the problem, there isn't the infrastructure, there aren't enough mental health practitioners to help these people. So the theme is to urge everyone, particularly the governments, to invest in mental health care, to bridge this gap. To give you an example, in our country, mental health, the budget for mental health care is just 0.05% of the total health budget.
Wow. So that would be a small scale.
So the theme is to urge at a global scale more investment, not just by the governments, but by all of us, even at an individual level. How much do I invest? How much time do I invest in taking care of my health? So of my mental health. So that's what this theme is all about.
Lovely. Going on, Miriam, I'd like to ask you is, given the current situation, where we are still in the midst of all this pandemic and its issues and the adverse effect it has had on us, I'm sure mental health issues have increased. You being a psychologist and you being in the field, you must be knowing all about that. So can you share with our listeners and with me, what exactly, how has the pandemic affected, mental health?
Sure, DC. So you're right about that. We are seeing a surge in mental health problems all over the world. And the reason for that being that people have been thrown into this situation quite unexpectedly. They did not have time to prepare for it. People have had to go through drastic life changes. Caring responsibilities have increased. So with schools closed, daycare centers closed, a lot of parents had to juggle between taking care of their children and working. And in India, we know that not always you have enough space to separate yourself while working. People have lost jobs. A lot of people are experiencing financial crisis. So all of these circumstances have caused a spike in mental health problems. In fact, Sangath has started a survey, a national survey right at the start of the pandemic, has been continuing with people who have responded, and almost 1,000 people have responded to this survey. And in this sample itself, we have seen seen a 23% of that population have experienced suicidal thoughts in some form or the other. 2/3 of the population who took the survey said they had anxiety and stress related to the pandemic. 1/3 had some form of depression. So we are seeing, and there are similar surveys done all over the world, and all are showing a spike in mental health
problems. Now, Miriam, you just said three very important words in your last statement. One being stress, the other anxiety, and the third depression. Now, are these interrelated? And are they like at the same time interrelated and at the same time different from each other? Can you please just elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So mental health problems are typically on a spectrum. There's no, people tend to think of it in black and white, that either you have a mental illness or not. Yeah. But on the lower end of the spectrum, you could say something like stress, where people just are stressed out is the layman term.
So it basically starts with stress.
Yes. That if there's a stressor and you're experiencing something, a change in your mood or in the way you're handling your life problems, that's typically just stress, a little bit of stress, which some people tend to just feel better when they share it with others, when they do a little bit of self-help and focus on their hobbies, things like that. But then as the severity increases, then the mental health problem can increase and then
too.
You can have a mental disorder, which would be, say, a depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder. And people know anxiety disorders. For example, specific phobias, like if you feel nervous or you start sweating when you see a spider or something, those are phobias. So phobias are a form of anxiety. And anxiety is typically manifested in that way, where you feel your heart is racing, you feel like you can't breathe, like you're sweating. Yes, like you're going to experience a heart attack. A panic attack is what people commonly use. So those are anxiety disorders. And depression, on the other hand, is a mood disorder. So you tend to feel very low, you tend to lose interest in anything that formerly gave you joy, you don't feel like going out with your friends, you feel like isolating, you feel guilt, irritation sometimes.
Like even probably low esteem, is that part of depression?
Yes, so you have all these feelings and negative thoughts. A lot of time people say, don't think negative thinking, that is what's causing the depression. But the negative thoughts are a symptom of the depression, and it's not very helpful telling someone don't think negative thoughts.
Easier said than done.
Because that's part of the disorder, right? And yes, to answer your question, sometimes you can have depression and anxiety together. But sometimes they can be separate as well.
Wow, that was very well explained, Miriam. And on that note, I would say that I think once you identify that somebody or someone or yourself has a little bit of, say, a mental issue or a disorder, that has to be recognized. So in the preliminary stages, if it is recognized and understood and dealt with, I think it could go a long way to actually overcoming it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, one thing is to identify and deal with it at the initial stages, but at Sangath we've even moved towards prevention now, where we are teaching.
That is the key.
Yeah, to build skills in school children, in adolescents, how to deal with challenges in life. So that's also the focus. But you're right. If someone is experiencing a problem, seeking help at the initial stages is a key factor in recovery.
Wow. After a very long time, someone told me that I was right. So thank you, Miriam, for that. And I would say, second your statement is, I think love has a lot to play in all this, right? So, I mean, whether you're a parent and if you've got children, or if you're a sibling, or if you've got parents also who are also on both ends of the spectrum, how do you deal with youth and senior citizens, on opposite ends of the same spectrum, so as to say, like for example, say you're living in a house, and say as you've got senior citizen and you've got children. So now the stress levels and the anxiety levels are different at both the ends. So you, as you've got your parents and you've got your children, how do you deal with that?
A good question, DC, and I can imagine that is a problem in a lot of Indian households where we have this scenario,
True.
especially because, and we are seeing this where young people have now learned that the pandemic is not such a big threat to them because the studies have shown that children young people are not affected as much as the elderly people, and on the other side, we know that the elders are at higher risk for it.
True.
And I can imagine why this could be a problem because young people might be wanting to go out. And so to answer your question, young people are especially if you're saying youth or adolescents, are at a stage where they want to be treated like adults.
Like adults,
they seek autonomy. They seek that their ideas are respected. And
accepted also. That's another thing.
So they need to be engaged in that fashion where they are provided an opportunity to brainstorm together with parents for an effective solution. So it cannot be that the parent is dictating to them or telling them that you have to do this because I said so. The problem needs to be put out to them saying this is what the problem is, your grandparent is at danger, how can we together ensure that their safety is met and collaboratively discuss options or better behaviors that are more acceptable behaviors with them, so they feel a part of the decision making process and not just that someone else has made a decision for me and is throwing it onto my face.
So I think what you said really makes a lot of sense is collaboration, and I think how you have roundtable conferences. I think as family, as nuclear families, we should be having maybe dinner table conferences.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, some studies have also shown that just parents having or a family having dinner, one meal every day together can reduce chances of young people developing alcohol problems later. So,
really?
Because this conversation that you have, and obviously it's not just eating quietly, but you have to have a conversation over, discuss each other's day, and it's not just you interrogating the child, but you also sharing what you've done, making that a very safe space for everyone to share and dialogue is a good place to start in a family.
Wonderfully said. And I think, would you have any a little tip to give the generation of today, whether it's the youngsters, like you said, the children or the adolescents, or whether it's the middle-aged parents, so as to say, who are dealing with taking care of the children, taking care of their elderly parents, as well as working and trying to fan, because another factor that has contributed a lot to, I think, stress and anxiety is the financial crisis that is prevalent in the pandemic.
Yeah, I think one thing that we all need a lot of today is empathy, and by empathy I mean seeing the other person's world through their eyes, and then dealing accordingly, because we all need to be mindful that everyone is fighting their own battle right now.
True,
and we need to be kind to ourselves as well from what we expect from ourselves. A lot of us are not able to do what we did before the pandemic, and therefore acknowledging that these are different circumstances and not pushing ourselves to do things that we did before. And similarly for others, maybe someone in your family was doing much more before, but in these circumstances may not be able to.
So another thing that I draw from what you just said is adaptation is right now the key that you have to adhere to suit the situation, so as to say.
Yes.
And I think hope is something that we need to start with ourselves, and I think give it to others.
Absolutely. Like I said in the beginning, mental health for all, and the theme is invest in mental health. Mm-hmm. We need to begin with investing in ourselves, investing time for your mental health, so taking out time in the day, no matter how hectic, just to do something that gives you joy, to relax. I think that's also very important.
It is very important, and I think for me, right now I'm feeling a little hungry. And I think cake always brings a lot of comfort to a lot of people. At least it brings a lot of comfort to me. So Miriam, we were talking about mental health, we were talking about youth, senior citizens, we were talking about the pandemic. Now I'd like to touch just one subject which I think a lot of parents out there who are tuned into this program would like to know, and it might give them a little bit of hope and a little bit of a few answers, so as to say. So Miriam, with children, they had a life different from what is happening right now. They used to go to school, they used to be playing outdoors, they used to be, jumping around, doing a lot of stuff, which now they are unable to do. And some of them find it very difficult and, to comprehend as to what's happening. So what I would like you to tell our listeners is how, as parents, would you identify that your child may or may not be going through, anything to do with mental health?
Good question, DC, and you're absolutely right about children also experiencing the brunt of the pandemic with the changes in their life and may not have the skills to express what's really happening internally.
To express. That's important.
And I think in this, there's no one size fits all, and parents know their children best. But there are certain things that you can watch out for. For example, if parents notice any changes in the children that weren't there before in terms of...
changes would be in behavior?
In behavior, in mood, so an increase in maybe tantrums, or even the opposite, spending a lot of time alone when previously they used to be very social children. Things like that. So any kind of change that parents think is alarming is important to be notified. I think parents also need to read up from credible sources and get enough information. There is a lot right now that they can know. Definitely not WhatsApp, but
WhatsApp is not the answer.
Yes, but parents can do a bit of research on their own to identify if some of these warning signs or red flags, as we call them, are something that needs to be taken seriously. They can consult mental health specialists. So, for example, the Directorate of Health Services, in collaboration with a lot of NGOs in Goa, is providing free services right now, mental health services. So, through the COVID app and the online platform. So they can call up, check if these are things that they need to be concerned about. But as a preventive measure or something to help children, and not just children but all of us, is it's best to have a routine at home every day. And this is something that you can develop with the child. So develop a timetable together. If they're really small children, so for example, helping them to know wake up time, they can draw a sun, and so draw a little timetable.
So make it very interactive. So they associate.
And so create this timetable that is visually appealing, put it up where everyone can see it, and everyone adheres to that. So it's not just something that the children have to do, but parents also try to maintain some sort of discipline in this time of the pandemic, and that gives some sense. Structure usually helps children. And if it's a bit too chaotic with their schedules, then children can get affected negatively.
And stressed out.
Yeah. So trying to create that structure within the home environment as far as possible, if people have access to open spaces, allowing children to go out, get some fresh air, some playtime. A lot of parents are now developing activities with the toys that they have at home, or
using the resources that you already have.
So spending a little time with your children to do those activities. Engaging them productively in those sort of things can prevent or help them if they are going through some kind of stress because of the pandemic.
Now, let's say that as a parent, you have identified, and like you said, the so-called red flags, you've tick marked everything, and then yes, you come to a conclusion that your child, or there is a child who is having a little bit of mental issues. So, what's the next step from there, Miriam? Like you said, there are organizations, and Sangath itself is associated with a lot of child development. You'll have been there in the industry for the past n number of years, and you'll have different programs, for different children, adolescents, and the entire spectrum of the age gap, basically. So what would be the next thing to do once you identify that?
Yes, so it depends where you go and with whose help you identify. So Sangath, although it was the first in Goa to provide these services to children, right now there are a lot of other services that are very good as well. Setu is a good center. There's Owl House. So there are centers like these where you can get exceptional help and care through professionals, trained professionals. So seeking help from them, and a large part of the barrier to seek help is also associated with what will people say, that my child has a problem, why am I going there? And I think that's a big barrier that parents need to cross, and I think we as a society need to sort of make a little changes for that to happen. But individually, I think within families being supportive of this. Sometimes what happens, one parent may think that they need to go, but the other parent says nothing's wrong with him. He's just behaving like my uncle or someone. They say it's within the family.
Actually, that is so true. I always get compared with. Anyway, that's a different thing altogether.
but what I meant to say was that sometimes the barriers can be within the family as well.
True,
so it's a collective effort of seeking help, and not just for children, but any kind of mental health problems. Yeah, seeking help is very important.
Very important. Do you think in our society mental disorders are a stigma, and what can be done about it?
You're absolutely right again, DC, about...
Oh, wow. I'm right again.
Yes. A lot of, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people, even though they may accept that they have a mental health problem, do not seek help because of the stigma associated with it. For example, there are a lot of people who, if they came to know that someone was seeking help from a psychiatrist, they wouldn't even know the details of what the problem was. But if they know that this person went once to a psychiatrist, then when it comes to things like marriage, then this goes around that, do you know that person, that family has a mental health problem? Then there are issues with not wanting to marry into that family. So these kind of issues prevent people from seeking help, and it really stems from a lack of understanding about mental health problems.
Very true.
For example, I said earlier that people tend to view mental health problems as black and white. You have a mental illness, which is a severe illness, which you cannot function, you cannot work, you cannot be married, that sort of
thing. You're deemed unacceptable in society, basically.
But actually mental illness or mental health problems are a spectrum, as we discussed earlier, and you can have a mental health problem where you can function absolutely fine. With help from your family and friends, and maybe from a professional. And even if you have severe mental illness, we know of a lot of people who have had very successful jobs, who have had successful marriages, of course with the help of medication or therapy. And so this lack of understanding or the knowledge of this, accurate knowledge about mental illness is where the stigma stems from. So I think one of the ways to deal with this is everyone gets educated about this, and understands mental health problem. And it's really common. So one in 10 people has a mental health problem.
We all go through it to some phase of our life. We experience it. Maybe not on, like you said, at a big level, but we do, and we do have those feelings or anxieties and stress. Now, you said something about education. So, Miriam, I would also further want to just ask you to share with us. Do you feel that enough of education is being, kind of what you say, in the field of education? Like in schools, how sex education was a taboo, and it is still a taboo in some, areas of India. And do you think that mental illness, we have this bad habit of saying, oh, he's mental. So do you think that the children from college level or school level need to be educated on something like this?
Absolutely, TC. And it's not just in words, right? In actions as well. People need to be included. And this is something else that Sangath is really striving for. We have a program called Beyond Boundaries, where we are equipping teachers with the skills to include children with special needs as well in the same classroom, so that they are not excluded. That's where children...
So they feel part of it.
And that's where the other children, maybe without special needs, realize that, okay, they are a part of our group. This is what...
acceptance again.
Acceptance of all people with different types of needs. And that's where we start, because we cannot be telling children that people with mental health problems need to be included and need to be accepted. They are just like us. But then in our actions, in our systems, we create systems where we have a separate place for...
barricade them from the rest.
So our actions and our words need to coincide. And I think to a large extent we are moving in that direction here in Goa especially. And young people, especially in colleges, now have access to the, social media is really empowering in terms of...
It is. Especially in a time like this, I think in the pandemic, social media is playing a very vital role. So, Miriam, thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of doubts have been cleared, and you so very nicely put it in very simple layman's language, and you made made everybody very comfortable in understanding, about mental health. And I, for one, also, I was always compared to somebody, and I'm not going to take names, but yes, mental health is a subject and a topic that needs to be brought out, and you need to deal with it. And like you said, identification, adaptation, and, at the end, I think it's just one word for everybody out here is hope.
Yeah.
So we hope that, people who are going through it come out of it. And we hope people who are also not going through it, but who are seeing other people go through it, understand them. So I think let's just spread the message of hope to everyone. So tell us, Miriam, typically, what is a day in the life of Miriam Sequeira?
Sure, TC. So I wake up whenever my son decides to wake up, who's almost 2 now. And
okay, that's
that
nice.
is after not much. I mean, he wakes up almost every 3 hours at night. So,
Wow.
When I wake up in the morning, I'm not in the best moods at all. I need my cup of coffee to get me going, which my husband very lovingly takes care of the breakfast, of lunch.
Okay.
He's in charge of the kitchen in the morning.
I bet right now all the wives who are tuning are kind of nudging their husbands. Listen to that.
Yes, so he takes care of everything so that I can get ready and get to office on time by 9:30. I'm in the office, which is in Purvari. And then I have chock-a-block. My calendar, my Outlook calendar has my schedule blocked with either seeing clients or a large part of the work that we do is research. So I have meetings or I'm supervising other people. I'm developing interventions or things like that.
Do you have to travel a lot, Miriam, in your job?
Otherwise, we would travel to our sites, which used to be the primary health centers. But now in the pandemic, not at all, actually.
Okay.
And then now in the pandemic, my office allows me to work from home.
Have more coffee.
Oh yes, definitely a lot of coffee. But
that's very sweet of them.
I get back home by 3:30, so then my husband can take over and start working because he's looking after my kid.
Okay. That's a very nice thing that y'all got going
so
there.
Then we shift roles, and I take over babysitting, and he starts working.
Okay. And does he have a coffee also?
He's not so much of a coffee addict as I am.
Chai.
I have taught him all those bad habits after marriage, but
yes.
But yes, and then so I spend time with my kid. While also trying to juggle between making dinner. I make sure that I take my son down to the river, which is very close to our house. He loves it there.
Lovely.
Yes, he loves to throw stones in the river, so we spend about an hour. I also get my exercise because I walk up and down the hill.
No
fishing. No. So we watch the fishermen, and then we come back home by about 7, which is when I start making dinner. And I feed my son his dinner, then we have dinner as a family.
I have to ask, your husband does come home, right?
He works from home entirely.
Okay, all right. So he's home, all right?
Yes.
Good. Is he tuned in right now?
Yes, he is.
Okay. So let's say hello to him. And tell us, Miriam, in your vast experience as a psychologist and what you've been doing a wonderful job, and you've been helping a lot of people. I'm sure in your kitty of experiences, can you pull out one instance or one story that you would like to share with all the listeners here?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a story which helps me go on. And I another colleague of mine as well who was involved with this. It was with a client who we helped who was experiencing domestic violence at home. Her husband had an alcohol problem. She was really concerned about the safety of her children, and she was really poor. She did not know who. She just happened to bump into me in a market, and that's how we managed to literally smuggle her into counseling to get her into counseling. She was coming for counseling. This empowered her. Counseling helped her make a decision. She was able to move out of that abusive situation, and seeing how happy she is today with her children, so empowered, that constantly reinforces my need to continue
to do what
working.
You do.
Yes, especially
Wonderful.
in this time when it can be very difficult to keep working, but stories like these make me keep going.
So, Miriam, it has been a pleasure, and it is a real honor to have you right here in the studios of All India Radio. And I'm sure every listener who has tuned in today, you have made their Saturday a little more special. So, a big thank you. But before you go, and before you leave us, and like they say, all good things do come to an end. Can you tell us, is there any message that you have for everybody tuned in?
Sure. DC, I think I was thinking about this, and to make it easier to remember, I just said I'll leave all the listeners with 3 E's. So educate yourself about mental health from credible sources, understand it. The other E is evaluate your own attitudes and beliefs. So what we were talking about, would I be friends or would I marry someone with a mental health problem? Do I stigmatize people with? So evaluate what are your own beliefs and change them for the better. And the third is empower yourselves, the third E. Empower with skills, with whatever you need, to either combat mental health related discrimination or to help someone else, or to fight the battles that you're fighting within you by seeking help. So those are the 3 E's.
Educate,
evaluate and empower yourself.
And empower. And you heard these words directly from the one and only Miriam Sequeira, who, by the way, first was a Carvalho. Yes, wink, wink. So, Miriam, once again, Karzan Sondyo Banekoro Mutta, so how they say right here in Goa. And I would say a big thank you. And on behalf of All India Radio, from everybody over here, from all the RJs, everyone, at All India Radio, and all the lovely, beautiful listeners, you have just enlightened our day. So, that's one more E. Okay. So thank you very much, and
it's been a pleasure.
Likewise. The honor is all. It's really an honor. And I'd also like to add to what you said on this Mental Health Day. Let us promise ourselves that no matter how hard life hits us, we will not be hard on ourselves.
That's very important.
It is, right?
Yeah.
So now tell us, if you want to reach out, for example, Miriam, and can you give us anything that we can reach out to you? I'm sure the listeners would love to connect with you on, at some time or anywhere, like Sangath is the place that way we can get in touch with you for any of issues or anything that you'd like to talk to you about?
Contact information, you can visit sangath.in, which is our website.
Yes. Okay. So you heard it from Miriam there. If you want to, get in touch with her, and this is only when after she's had her coffee, mind you, and yes, she's in her Porvorim office. So Miriam, once again, thank you. And to all our listeners out there, like I always say, you gotta stay home, you gotta stay calm, you gotta stay safe, and
keep the faith.
That's right. Until next time, my dear listeners, this is me, DC, yours truly, and together with Miriam Sequeira saying thank you, good night, and God bless you all.